To kill man is to reach heaven, from where we came before the doom drum's iniquity. When we accomplish this, we can escape the mockery and the long shame of the material prison. Hey, what's going on, dudes? My name is MrRhexx, and we are back with some more Elder Scrolls Skyrim LorePlay edition. On the last episode, we went into a pretty long Dwemer dungeon, but... You said something? It's like you said something.
I've got your back.
Alright, so I wanted to make sure that she wasn't bugged or anything. We went inside the Dwemer dungeon, which I'm going to check the name for real quick, because they have weird names. Angarvunde. Which is essentially a combination of like a library and an engineering bay where they construct a lot of animunculi, and we talked about a lot of different topics, and today is not gonna be much different because we are going to be doing another dungeon. In fact, the last dungeon of this area that, well, you know, not of the entire Riften area, but just of this sort of quadrant over here that I wanted to complete before moving on to the next objective. This one, on the other hand, is going to be a Nordic dungeon. The quest that we are going to be getting inside, we can actually just sort of go in and start doing it. But, more importantly, we're going to be answering some pretty hard-hitting questions because the topics of today are going to be pretty deep. We're going to be talking about some, like, game-ending topics, I would say. At least in a bit, because before we do that, King Beer asked, quite frankly, if Hagravens killed Spriggans, I think they are a wholly positive influence in Skyrim because Spriggans are annoying. That is very true, sir. But the question is, why do Nords generally seem to have a distaste for magic? Is it just due to their warrior honor culture, or is it something else? I see elves and humans to be, for the most part, sort of like a small deviation from the entities that made them. The Nords specifically were sort of made with Shor and Kinnereth in mind. So it's very likely that they're going to, for the most part, share very similar cultures. And I guess I'm talking specifically about Nords in this case, maybe not about humans. Just sort of following the Nordic traditions and what they actually believe, that they were basically made to be with Shor and to fight for Shor, essentially. Ooh, we're having some spiders over here. You will notice there's a little bit of a camp here, completely left. We're in the middle of doing some cooking, and they're no longer here. If we go and check the journal, we'll see what this is all about. The Journal of Madresi Dran on Angarvunde, which is the dungeon we're about to enter. Whispers of this ancient temple have been few and far between, and most real knowledge seems similar to Angarvunde itself. Buried and forgotten. I don't know why I'm doing it German style. Angarvunde. Yet every story or legend I hear all seem to speak of immeasurable riches found deep within. Great treasures await for the worthy adventurer. Well then, tomorrow I will hire a mining team to assist me in my excavation and head towards the ruin. And by this time next month, I shall be rich. We got a little book we're gonna get the speech increase for. But yeah, it seems like someone is out in that ruin trying to get rich. Let's go ahead and check that out. But yeah, I mean, most like, we've been talking about this for the past couple of days, and it really does ring true, the idea that most of Elder Scrolls is really centered around the difference between elves and humans and how they hate each other.
Oh, I didn't see you there.
You seem troubled.
Of course I'm troubled. I'm on the verge of incredible wealth, but my cowardly workforce ran at the first sign of danger.
What scared them off?
We were excavating this old tomb when we opened a chamber full of corpses. The team took one look, turned tail, and ran.
Haven't they seen dead bodies before? Come on.
Well, probably not like these. The ones in there are all still walking around. In any case, if I can't get past the creatures in that room, I can't recover the treasure. I need more manpower.
Well, I am a lot of man, so... But what about this treasure?
Legend says this tomb holds a treasure that bestows great power on the one who discovers it. Beyond that, not much more is known. Obviously, this treasure will fetch a good deal of gold, and I'm willing to let you share in the reward when we find it. In any case, if I can't get past the creatures in that room, I can't recover the treasure. I need more manpower.
Interesting. So she talks about some form of artifact, some kind of treasure that bestows power upon the one who finds it. So like some kind of artifact, like a magical artifact or something. Or maybe a weapon. Maybe I could help you.
Say, that's not a bad idea. You look like you could handle yourself against these beasts. I'll tell you what. You help me get the treasure, and I'll split it with you. Deal?
That sounds pretty good to me.
Excellent. With my brains and your brawn, that treasure will soon be mine. Ours. First, I need you to clear the main chamber of those monstrosities. I'll stay here until you're finished, planning our next move.
Alright, something tells me this might not be going too well. We basically go from one, because literally in the last dungeon there was also a character that was just like, the treasure will be ours. That didn't go so well either, so I don't think this one is going to. But to really answer your question, King Beer, I want to also answer another question that is also very interesting. It's going to be the main bulk of this video, which is Mo MH1 asked me, can you tell us about the pillars of the world, like the Throat of the World or the Tower in Cyrodiil? Now this is literally like, we're talking about big picture stuff. See, I'm deciding that I'm actually going to be leveling my bound bow this time around. Actually doing some conjuration shenanigans, which I really should be doing. So the towers of Elder Scrolls, you would know them as, for example, the White Gold Tower. You would know them as the Red Tower, or rather the Red Mountain. These are essentially sort of like the building blocks of the world. The one thing, or the one group of things that actually keeps this planet from succumbing to the Daedras, but also just simply from disappearing into the ether and getting completely disconstructed. It's like the one thing, it's like the glue, sort of, that keeps the planet together from just completely dispersing. So they're quite important, I would say, and also have a lot to do with just the very creation of the planet from way back into the dawn times. Let's go and finish this guy off. It's a pretty easy first mission, though the quest is actually quite long. Because most of it is just going to be us killing like a bunch of Scourges and not Daedras. Druggers. Hey, come over here. What are you doing? Oh, is it because he's running away from my fire? Makes sense. We're also going to be recharging this weapon quite a bit. It's nice that Dawnbreaker actually has a lot of charge power. We'll be able to use this ability a lot. There you go. It's pretty dope. So see, it all has to do. So the first main tower is basically Adamantia, the Adamantine Tower, which is supposed to be located. It's not supposed to be. It is located in High Rock. You can actually sort of see it if you play Elder Scrolls Online and you go into that area. I'm gonna actually be looting a little bit. But the idea of the tower was sort of like the place where the gods convened in order to decide what they were going to do with Lorcan. But it was also more than that. It was sort of like a location for them to manifest themselves physically. It was essentially like a place where you could turn a god from an idea, a concept, this powerful, like, ethereal entity, and then turn that into like a physical manifestation, to turn it into, you could even say like a mortal creature, essentially. And that was like the power of the tower.
Have you killed them all yet?
I did, actually. They're all dead.
Then we've no time to lose. Follow me.
Yes, ma'am. And what actually powers the tower is not just the tower itself. The tower is basically like a containment unit for the real power. And the real power is the stone inside of the tower. And you are being obnoxious, Ilya, because you're blocking not just her, but me too. Let's just make our way over here. Struggling to talk a little bit, mostly I think Ilias actually... Okay, we're good. He's blocking the girl. This is a lot of sort of like talking that's gonna happen here, but then we'll be free to just be ourselves for a bit. Just follow her for a few seconds. It's gonna give us a key that we kind of need.
These doors seem to be the only thing left between me and the treasure.
Is there some way to open them?
There'd better be. I didn't come all this way to leave empty-handed. There must be a way to activate these doors deeper in the ruins. Here, take this key. It should open the doors on either side of the chamber.
Thank you very much. And then we continue with the quest, free from her pursuit. Essentially, what's inside of the towers that makes them so strong is the stones that are inside. Now, the stones are not always actual literal stones. It tends to differ. They're all called stones, but they're not necessarily like a gem or a crystal. It's, in fact, some of them are even like people. Or I guess you will see in a bit once I go into it. But the stone's power, what they actually sort of literally do is they have the ability to grab power from Aetherius and then just sort of bring it into the world. And you see, the thing is, the world of Nirn, this planet where we currently are on, it's not nestled in Aetherius. And Aetherius, like the energies that surround Aetherius, are basically creation energy. Like, that's what entities use to make things. It's what the Daedra actually use to create things. You know, if the Daedra wants to, like, I guess, empower their own domain, like, they have to use Aetherius energy in order to make that happen, essentially. And Nirn is no exception. And the stones are supposed to sort of bring energy from Aetherius into this world and then keep it here, because for whatever reason, existing in the void just sort of absorbs creation energy, absorbs divinity, absorbs Aetherius from you, which is interesting how that works. Now, the real question that, of course, people should be asking themselves is, well, why would the gods construct... this might hurt. Oof. I'm good. The real question is, well, why would the gods construct this planet in the void when it would be exceedingly difficult to maintain, right? I mean, we know that essentially the entirety of Oblivion is essentially in between Aetherius and the planet. Like, when Magnus actually escaped Nirn, he had to punch an enormous hole through Oblivion, and that's what the sun is. So why would they build it here? And that's a real question, and we don't really have many answers to that. The biggest one, I would say, is probably the Khajiit theory of how everything came to be, because the Khajiits, and I like their stories a lot, they're kind of cool. They talk a lot about this difference of opinions between Padome and Anu in terms of creation, in terms of how many children they were going to have, in terms of how many gods they were going to create. Anu just wanted to create the original gods, but Padome wanted to create a bunch of them. And essentially Anu had to stealthily sort of run away from Anu and make Nirn very far away in a place where Anu wouldn't be able to get to. Because if he would, Anu would actually destroy the world. So Anu essentially wants to destroy Nirn, but it, for whatever reason, it can't get here. And it is not very likely that it is because of the void that stops him. The Khajiits personally believe that it is the moons that prevent the Anu from actually making his way here, but that's not really the point of what I'm trying to say. The idea is that for whatever reason, and that being probably the reason, the gods decided to make Nirn in the void. And but that's extremely difficult to maintain in terms of energies. So just by the gods being here, essentially, like, they needed to fuel the planet with energy. Like, we talked about Lorcan tricking the gods. What that really means is that the gods being here meant that their power was being absorbed by the planet, because the planet needed this power. And this also meant that if the gods left... Wow. That's... Oh, it was the trap. Jesus Christ, I almost died. But that also meant that if the gods were to leave Nirn, then the planet would just simply dissolve and get destroyed, and that would have sort of been counter to everything that they had just worked towards. So they decided to create the second tower. So the first tower, which is the Adamantine Tower, was created in order to create the planet. It's like the very first thing that they made, the very foundation of existence in order to create the planet. And it was also the place where they would become manifest, where they become physical. But they realized that they needed divine energy to fuel this planet, and that's when they created the second tower, which is the Red Tower, Red Mountain. And of course we know the story. The gods convened in the first tower. They decided that they were going to throw the heart of Lorcan and then create the mountain. And the idea being that by fusing the heart into this world, they would essentially make Nirn a divine. Like, the planet would become a divine entity. And by doing that, they could move energy from Aetherius into the planet and then sort of give it that energy that it needed. And basically, from that moment on, the other towers have just sort of been similar in that idea of like trying to empower the world, though not necessarily for maybe altruistic purposes. The thing is, those were the only two towers that the gods actually made. There's a guy over here, isn't he? Like all the way above? It's like hiding somewhere. I think it went inside of the room. It's fine. Those were the only two towers that the gods made, and once those two towers were left, the gods realized, like, okay, we have created Red Mountain, we don't have to stay here anymore, we're good. And they actually left. Now, just like we talked before, the elves want to go to heaven. They want to return to their high pedestals, you know, all the way in heaven. They want to return to being immortal. That's what the elves want the most. So they attempted to essentially recreate the very same thing that the gods just did. Because the gods made the towers. Can I level with that? No. The gods made the towers and then left. So the elves are like, hey, we want to do that too. We want to leave. So they started creating their own towers. Now, once again, towers are drawing energy from Aetherius, basically empowering the planet with energy. So whenever you would make one of these towers, the land around would sort of get empowered with the philosophies or ideas of those that created them. And that's where you see all the different sort of cultures and regions that you see in the world. The first tower was the crystal-like law, which is the crystal tower in the Somerset Isles. If you play Elder Scrolls Online, you can actually go and actually see it. There was the Green Sap Tower, which is more like a bunch of towers. Those are actually the Grat trees, the great oak trees of Valenwood. It is believed that the actual towers are the trees, but the stone that empowers them is a single fruit on the biggest tree, on the tree of Falinesti. And it is actually believed that the stone that empowers the crystal tower in the Somerset Isles is actually a person, which is interesting. Whoever that person might be, we do not know. Or if it's even a person, that's just like sort of like the theory, essentially. There is, of course, the Snow Throat, which is the throat of the world, which is supposed to also be a tower, though the actual stone that empowers the tower, we don't really know what it is. One of the writers for Elder Scrolls Online sort of made a comment on it by the time Oblivion was actually coming out, a year before Oblivion came out, saying that it was actually a cave. There's a cave somewhere in the throat of the world that holds the power of the of that specific tower. But what's also interesting is that the books, the lore books in Skyrim say that the tower as we actually see it, the throat of the world as we see it, is not actually complete. That there's actually the other half of the tower that does not exist within this time frame. Whether it exists in some form of ethereal realm, or it is maybe split out of time, like the time wound that you deal with in this game. or maybe the other part of the tower is literally in Etheria. Like, whatever it actually means, we do not know, but we do know for a fact that there is part of the mountain that exists in some other shape or form, in some other dimension or something like that. And that's probably where the actual stone is, where the cave, in quotes, is located. There is the Orichalcum, the Orichalc Tower. I don't know how to pronounce that, to be honest, but you guys probably know what I mean. The Orichalc Tower. That was the tower that was supposed to be in Jokuda, where the Red Guards came from, but that entire island basically went down. You know what happened there. The tower... In fact, it is believed that that's why the island went down, because the tower was destroyed. The stone of that tower is actually supposed to be a sword. And that's why the Jokudans are like super sort of scimitar oriented, like their religion has to do a lot with swords and weaponry. It's because they basically venerated this one stone, this legendary artifact that powered the island. But somebody took the weapon basically, and the whole thing went down. The whole island just succumbed down into the depths of hell. There is, of course, the White Gold Tower. We know that as the Imperial City in Cyrodiil. The actual stone is, of course, the red diamond on the whatchamacallit, the Amulet of Kings. Whew. However, that one was destroyed. The Amulet of Kings is supposedly destroyed. Let me go ahead and summon this guy. During the end of Oblivion, of course, Martin sort of crushes the stone in order to close the jaws of Oblivion from, you know, invading this realm. So it is very likely that as far as the tower basically giving power, as far as the tower protecting Mundus, that thing is over. That stone is probably, that tower is probably ineffective now. We know that the stone in Red Mountain is also destroyed. That was the Heart of Lorcan. Of course, when the Dwemer sort of went and just bothered with it, the whole thing just sort of went down. The heart disappeared. So that stone is also, this is where I came from. The stone was, well, we don't know if destroyed, but it certainly doesn't exist anymore. And we know that Red Mountain basically erupted, which does signify that the tower is basically no longer protecting the world, but might even just be a menace to the world at this point. What's interesting is that there is actually a book that they released here for Skyrim that talks about the events of Elder Scrolls Oblivion, but specifically what happened in the Somerset Isles, which of course we know to be the what actually ended up creating the Thalmor. The Thalmor came about during the Oblivion Crisis as a way to deal with the Daedra. Now, what's interesting, the reason that I'm bringing it up, is because the Crystal Tower was actually destroyed in Elder Scrolls Oblivion during the Oblivion Crisis. The Daedra actually invaded the tower and completely destroyed it. Now, that is the tower. They destroyed the tower. We don't know actually what happened with the gem, with the stone, and if the stone is indeed a person, we don't know where that person is, right? So that thing could still be activated, but the tower itself is destroyed. The Crystal Tower is gone. So that basically means that we have the White Gold Tower is destroyed. We have the Red Tower is destroyed. We have the White Gold, the Red one. We have the Crystal one is destroyed. We have the Jokuda, the Orichalcum Tower is destroyed. Okay, let me go ahead and pick this up. We have a bunch of towers that are destroyed, and you would have noticed too that, and then there's also the Brass Tower, which is also considered to be a tower, which is also obviously destroyed, has been destroyed multiple times, I guess, has been sort of remade and then redestroyed, once during the Tiber Septim times, and then once again in sort of Morrowind, when Dagoth sort of tried to rebuild it, it was also destroyed. And then during, oh, this guy is going to be difficult. Elder Scroll Daggerfall, I should just level up. I will do the perks later. Let's go ahead and do this. Do this. I may also recharge my Dawnbreaker because we're out of juice. It's really where most of our power comes from. It's kind of nice fighting a bunch of Draugrs when we have Dawnbreaker. It's pretty powerful. I wish he would target Atronak, because I'm gonna need it. Now, in any case, why is this important, right? Why are the towers that important? Because that's actually how the world basically ends. The story of Elder Scrolls, is essentially the story of how this planet was created and how the planet will be destroyed. Like, that's essentially where the story is going. You would notice that in Elder Scrolls Morrowind, one of the towers is destroyed, is sort of the median, and it also has to do a lot with the Heart of Lorkhan, of course. Oblivion has to do with the destruction of the Red Diamond, which is the White Gold Tower. And then you have Elder Scrolls Skyrim, which has to do potentially with the destruction of the Snow Throat. If you remember, when you talk about the prophecy of the Dragonborn, it talks about the Snow Tower, kingless, sundered, bleeding. It talks about the possible destruction of this tower. So you have these last 3 games that all have to do with the main tower basically either being destroyed or completely crippled. And the idea of the Thalmor is interesting. You guys asked me before if the Thalmor are going to win. If this is like a confrontation that will end. And I answered that, yeah, the Thalmor are probably going to win. Like, that's the main plot of Elder Scrolls is the humans versus the elves and their differences. And essentially is the idea that the elves want to become gods. They want to... Oh, that's harsh. There we go. I'm trying to conserve as many healing potions as I can. But the elves want to become gods, and they're going to destroy everything in order to make that happen. That's basically what they want. Now, how did they actually accomplish this? It comes back to basically what I was narrating at the beginning of the episode. To kill a man is to reach heaven, from where we came before the doom drum's iniquity. When we accomplish this, we can escape the mockery and long shame of the material prison. Now, what I'm going to describe to you right now is basically Thalmor dogma. It's what the Thalmor believe and how they plan to achieve immortality once again, how they used to be before they were turned basically into the elves. This guy's going to be difficult. Just do that. Let me go ahead and kill this guy first, because this is going to be kind of hard. There we go. Now this guy has been feared by the power of my Dawnbreaker, which is awesome because we prevent him from actually attacking us. Because this guy is pretty hard. I'm just going to attack him with my right click to hit him with the Dawnbreaker. Get that fire damage. He's just completely screwed. He's just trying to run away. Dude. Get out of here. Alright. Dear God. It just never ends, does it? So, the plan that the Thalmor have is basically threefold. They have 3 things that they want to accomplish. The first thing is to eliminate Talos, or rather to weaken Talos. Why is that? Because Talos is essentially a representation of Lorkhan. The same ideals as Lorkhan. Is a god, is a human god. Humans want to stay on Nirn, elves want to eliminate it and ascend into godhood. That's just the basic premise. So any god of humans basically will want to keep this place from being destroyed. So they want to do anything within their power to either eliminate, to subvert, or just to completely just kill Talos. And how do you do that? Well, remember what I said a few episodes ago, which is not something that really gets brought up much within the world of Elder Scrolls. Gods get more powerful the more servants they have. The more you venerate a god, the more you pray to a god, the more powerful that god becomes. So if a god is popular, that god is powerful. It's essentially what it is. So when you make it so that it is illegal, running out of healing potions, when you make it so that it is illegal to pray to a god, you weaken that god. You make that god weaker, which in turn makes it easier to eliminate. That's what their end goal is. That's like the ultimate solution that they want to make happen. they believe that his very presence fortifies Nirn and fortifies the defenses of Nirn. Basically how sort of Akatosh, in a way, wanted to protect this realm from Oblivion by summoning his avatar at the end of Elder Scrolls Oblivion. Something very similar to that. The second plan is to remove man, not just from the world, but from the pattern of possibility, so that the very idea of them can be forgotten and thereby never again repeated. The way that they want to go about doing that is essentially by destroying the towers. That is the ultimate goal of the Thalmor. The Thalmor want to destroy every single one of the towers that we just talked about, because by destroying the towers, you unhinge Nirn from Aetherius. You unhinge it, you destroy it, the very like fabrics that keep it together get dissolved. And basically, it would cease to exist. And if it ceases to exist, then the elves believe that they wouldn't be shackled to this realm anymore, and they would be able to finally ascend and become gods like they used to be. But more specifically, they believe that Akatosh, Anuel, is imprisoned in this planet, just as they are. And they want the dragon, so to speak, right? The Akatosh, the dragon, to be freed so that it can return to its timeless form and bring all of its children up with him. Jesus. Talk about a chain effect there. And then their last point would basically be, now, after Talos is destroyed and the humans have been removed, and I'm going to read it verbatim. It says here, with Talos and the sons of Talos removed, the dragon will become ours to unbind, and the world of mortals will be over. The dragon will uncoil his hold on the stagnancy of linear time and move as a free serpent once again, moving through the ether without measure or burden, spilling time along the innumerable roads we once traveled. And with that, we will regain the mantle of the imperishable spirit. And that is the Thalmor dogma. That's what they want to do. Now, they didn't have to destroy the White Gold Tower once they owned it within the Great War, because the Great Tower, the White Gold Tower is already, it doesn't work anymore. The Red Diamond was already crushed and destroyed, so they didn't have to worry about that. Their tower is already destroyed, so they don't have to worry about that. Their goal is to destroy the Snow Throat, the Throat of the world, basically, and would be to destroy the Adamantine Tower. Like, that's really that would be the goal. Now, they do have to destroy the green sap, which is the trees over in Valenwood, and I'm not sure how they're going to go about doing that, because they probably could, but the problem with doing that is that if they fight the boss mare, they would probably lose the Elmeri Dominion, right? Like, the reason the Elmeri Dominion is so powerful is because they have the power of both the High Elves and the Wood Elves. Without the Wood Elves... Oh no. Wait, hold on! It is... Oh. Damn. Yeah, without the boss mare, I mean, the Elmeri Dominion would just be nothing. So they probably are keeping secret their true goal from the boss mare. I don't know if that's even possible, but yeah, probably what they would do. That's weird. It's like some glitches going on over here. Let me see something. This is most bizarre. Oh. There's supposed to be a rare item in there. It's a broken sword that you're supposed to get in here. There's only like 3 in the game, and only 2 of them are accessible to the player. Too bad. It's like a rare thing. Oh well. We're gonna go ahead and just go down and obtain our word of power. And we would be officially done with this dungeon. We got the little sound that signifies that the dungeon is complete. And here lies the word of power, and the dungeon is complete. There you go. So in essence, the very story of Elder Scrolls is the story of the world's creation and then the world's destruction. And the main combatants in this battle are essentially the elves and the humans, in the same way that has always been. At the very beginning of time, in the dawn time, the humans fighting the elves. Most gods essentially on the sides of the elves, and then the humans only with like basically Shore, with Lorcan on their side. What's interesting is that every single tower was actually made by the elves. You have the towers that were made by the gods, which were the Adamantine Tower in High Rock, and then the Red Mountain that was made by using the Heart of Lorcan. Once the gods left, then the elves wanted to sort of recreate this. Ironically, now they want to destroy it, but they wanted to recreate what the gods did, and so they created basically all the other towers. The left-handed elves made the tower in Jokura, which is not destroyed. The High Elves, the Aldmer, the old Aldmer, made the Crystal Tower in the Somerset Isles, which is not destroyed. The Heartland Elves, the Summer Elves, the Aelid, made the White Gold Tower, that is now also destroyed. And then, now what's interesting though is that now we have, and also the Brass Tower, which is Numidium, was made by the Dwemer, which were also elves. The only tower that was not made by the elves or the gods was allegedly... okay, I don't want to say that now. I take it back. I was going to say that the Snow Tower, the Throat of the World, wasn't made by the elves, but it was made by the gods. As far as the Nords are concerned, what the Nords actually believe is that the Throat of the World was made by Kynareth. The story says that Kynareth basically just blew life into the world. She just blew life into the world, and that's where the Nords were created. That she basically created the Nords by using her breath, and that the location where she used the breath was the Throat of the World. So you infer that basically Kynareth created the Throat of the World for the Nords to have like their own form of power, because again, these are sources of major power, and the towers basically change the areas around them. So, without Jokura, without the Orichalcum Tower, Jokura simply fell into the ocean, right? Like, that was what was keeping the island afloat. It is believed that the Throat of the World keeps the Nords here. It keeps, like, the magics of this land active. In the same way that the Red Mountain, not existing anymore, basically takes the land with it, right? That's all interesting. But, what's interesting is that, Kynareth, we talked about how important she was to the Nords. It's interesting that she created the Nords, so essentially created the enemies of the elves, which is particularly interesting because Lorcan, when Lorcan said that he wanted to construct this planet, this reality, the very first spirit that said, hey, hells yeah, let's do this, it was actually Kynareth. Kynareth was the very first spirit that said, yeah, let's build this place. And it is also known that when Lorcan was killed by Trinimac, the only god that actually mourned Lorcan was Kynareth. It is said that that's when rain actually was invented. When rain fell for the first time was because Kynareth was weeping because of the death of Lorcan. So it is interesting that we have Kynareth basically creating the Nords, creating this tower, and also protecting the tower, right? It is very likely that the reason that we don't have the crystal here in the Throat of the World is because Kynareth is probably protecting it. And that's interesting. So, for the elves to basically win and destroy the world, they would have to either destroy this tower, this particular gem, wherever it is, and they would have to go to High Rock and destroy the Adamantine Tower. And then the world would probably be over. One of the bigger sort of like myths of Elder Scrolls, told by some of the writers, is that the idea is that Elder Scrolls is the world of Nirn is supposed to be destroyed in the 5th era. So we're just basically one era away from the destruction of the world. And again, it has a lot to do with what we talked about in the last episode when we mentioned the idea of moving over to the next cycle. That Alduin and Julianos and what was it, Standar? I think it was Standar. They're supposed to be sort of like part of the drive force that takes the world into the next cycle, according to Nord mythology. So it is very likely that just in a few games we'll see what happens truly with the end of the world. But that's gonna be Yeah, probably a few games away. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. Just a lot of talking about like big picture stuff. It was fun. Probably just so much. There's just so much to talk about the Zero Stone, about the different gems. Man, just trying to just go back in my head to see if I forgot something that I wanted to talk about, but I don't know. I think we got it. Thank you so much for watching the video. Make sure to follow me on Twitter. You guys have been amazing at following me on Twitter, and I appreciate that. That and supporting me on Patreon is just literally the best thing that you can do. Also, before I go, I'm gonna make a straw poll, and I'm gonna leave it in the description of this video so that you guys can actually vote on which follower we're going to be using. We've been using Ilya for a while, and she's pretty good, mostly because she is really strong. But I think it's time for me to leave it basically up to you guys on who we're going to be using. And I'm going to see about equipping them also with magical items and all that good jazz. So make sure to go down there and leave your vote for me so that I can see what you guys actually want. And also, keep telling me which Daedra you guys want me to do. I'll be checking out your comments, and yeah, I guess you will decide where we go from here. We're basically done with this area, at least for now. We'll of course do the sort of uppermost area later whenever we actually get there in any of our quests. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all next Monday. Peace out.